In the hilltop town of Assisi, with the sanctuary of Saints Francis and Clare, there's also the remains of Carlo Acutis, born in 1991, not a friar, not a founder, not a martyr in the classical sense, but a teenager in trainers with a laptop, a digital disciple, and soon perhaps the first millennial saint. But his story also raises a pressing theological and ecclesiological question. What does it mean to make saints today in an age without the devil's advocate? Carlo Acutis was a thoroughly modern mystic born in London, raised in Milan, obsessed not with TikTok dances or teenage rebellion, but with the Eucharist, charity, and building a website cataloguing miracles. He died in 2006 of acute leukemia, aged just 15, and offered his suffering, in his words, for the Lord, for the Pope, for the Church. His sanctity, as Pope Francis remarked, was ordinary holiness in an extraordinary age. Or maybe that should be the other way round, extraordinary holiness in an ordinary age. It's perhaps no accident that his final resting place is Assisi, his body dressed not in a cassock or a cope, but hoodie and Nikes. It's not a relic of another world, it's a visible image of sanctity. Now, Carlo's cause has been advanced with startling speed. 2 miracles have been formally recognised, one involving a Brazilian child cured of a pancreatic disease, the other a young woman in Florence who survived a brain hemorrhage after prayers were offered at Carlo's tomb. But beyond the miracles lie the symbolism, and for Pope Francis, holding up Acutis was part catechesis, part cultural intervention, and at a time when the Church is seen as ossified, beset by scandal, allergic to progress, Carlo is the counter-example, a young man using tech not for narcissism but for evangelism, a saint not of the cloister but of the classroom, not above us but beside us, within us, for us. And here lies the rub. Since 1983, when Pope John Paul II streamlined the canonization process, the office of promotor fidei, popularly known as the devil's advocate, was suppressed. That official role, once charged with rigorously challenging the evidence for sainthood, functioned not as a cynic but as a necessary skeptic, and ensured sanctity was never confused with sentimentality or credibility. The abolition of the devil's advocate, and there was a great book by Morris West, I think probably his best book. The abolition of this role has made canonization more frequent, more responsive to public devotion, but arguably less robust. And the book, I think his finest novel, Morris West's finest novel, precisely because it asks whether sanctity must be interrogated, even tested to destruction, to be truly believed. And so probably one needs to ask, do we make saints too easily now? Or has the modern world become so spiritually indifferent that even one luminous life, like Carlo's, shines more brightly than ever before? Critics rightly observe that the process remains expensive. Miracles require medical documentation, testimonies need translation. A cause for sanctity is often championed by those with means, usually religious orders, occasionally wealthy families. And Pope Francis didn't reduce the costs in line with his Church of the Poor vision, but it remains a process where charisma meets capital. In Carlo's case, his mother, Antonia Salzano, has been indefatigable, managing relic tours, publishing testimonies, even claiming a posthumous dream in which her son foretold her bearing twins. Whether or not this counts as a miracle is up for debate, but as public relations, it's masterful. Carlo is more than a candidate, he's a corrective to a church facing plummeting attendance, especially among the young. Carlo offers a radiant counter-narrative. He evangelized online, he saw beauty in liturgy, prayed the rosary on the beach, and limited screen time voluntarily. That alone feels supernatural. His motto, not I but God, is theology distilled for the digital age. He saw the Eucharist not as a ritual but as a real presence. He called it the highway to heaven. Yet in praising him, the Church is also making a strategic appeal. We're not irrelevant, it's saying. Holiness wears hoodies, it's saying. And that only works if sanctity isn't diluted into popularity without the devil's advocate. The Church must resist the temptation to canonize cultural figures for marketing purposes. Carlo's canonization must be authentic, not algorithmic. So what does Carlo Acutis tell us about the future of sanctity? First, that sanctity is not antiquarian. Saints are not museum pieces. They are icons of possibility. They are the call for everyone. Secondly, that the church still hungers for exemplars, lives that glow with virtue in a morally muddled age, but in the absence of the devil's advocate, that hunger should not eclipse discernment. And thirdly, that the saints we need may not be martyrs of blood, but martyrs of boredom, those who resist the pull of distraction, addiction, consumerism. And Carlo did that. He showed that sanctity in our time might look like screen discipline, that Eucharistic reverence might be his thing, and radical charity is not something of the past. Leo XIV now inherits the decision, and that will take place after a consistory meeting shortly. And whether he canonizes Carlo this year or next, what matters more is that he reopens the question of what constitutes sanctity in the modern age. And on June the 13th at 9 a.m. in the Apostolic Palace, the Pope will meet with the College of Cardinals to vote on several causes for canonization. And this meeting will pick up where Pope Francis left off before his death. On February the 25th, Pope Francis approved the canonization of two causes, and later on March the 31st, another decree was issued giving the green light for two more, all of them still without confirmed dates for canonization ceremony now. And among the future saints, it's expected that Pope Leo will tell the cardinals to finalize the canonization of two Venezuelans, one of whom was known as a doctor of the poor, and the other was a founder of the Servants of Jesus in Venezuela. But the most anticipated decision is the rescheduling of the canonization of Carlo Acutis. And the original date was set for April the 27th, but the ceremony, of course, couldn't take place because of the death of the late Pope Francis. Canonization requires a papal rite, so the Pope must be present. At the time, the Vatican was in sede vacante, a vacant seat, so the event was, of course, by necessity, postponed. And I think the modern age requires holiness. If everyone is extraordinary, no one is. And holiness, like truth, should never be immune to scrutiny, especially in an age so allergic to commitment and so susceptible to performance. But we need our models of excellence. Our goal should be excellence. So we should honour, I think, Carlo Acutis, not because he's relatable, but because he is radiant, not because he looks like us, but because, God willing, he calls us to be more like God, to realise the theosis that is already active, and I think people of any religion and none should admire someone who works so tirelessly for the good.